Hi, this is Rita Keeping It Real, and we are going through the Bible, doing our Bible reading from the Good News Bible with the Apocrypha. We're reading First Maccabees. We're on chapter 11. Also, show this little tiny Apocrypha where it's just the Apocrypha that you can buy if that's what you need. But this has all of the Old Testament, New Testament, and the Apocrypha in it. And we're on chapter 11, and we're just going to get started. The fall of Alexander Epiphanes. King Ptolemy the sixth of Egypt assembled an army of soldiers more numerous than the grains of sand along the seashore, and he also gathered a great fleet of ships. He intended to trap Alexander, take his kingdom, and add it to his own. So he went to Syria with promises of peace, and the citizens opened their gates to him and welcomed him. King Alexander had ordered them to do this because Ptolemy was his father-in-law. But as Ptolemy moved north, he stationed a detachment of troops in each town. Again, this book is about a lot of wars, a lot of battles. And it's hard for me to relate because I haven't been in a war like this with troops, but it's interesting. When he reached Ashdod, the people there showed him the burned ruins of the temple of Dagon and the surrounding towns. There were corpses everywhere. Still, every time I read this, I think this happened in the past, but it's going to happen again. It's happening right now to people. It's happening right now in the wars that are going on right now in 2024. So I just read the word corpses everywhere. Corpse. It's making me stop. I can't keep reading. It's like I keep thinking, I'm reading this and I'm putting it online, and I should read really succinctly and say every word right and sound real professional, and I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I'm gonna do what the Most High is asking me to do, and let's stop right there. Like corpses everywhere. So just imagine that. You know, you walk around and you walk outside and you're walking over corpses. The bodies of the men Jonathan had burned to death. Jonathan, these oh, Jonathan had burned to death during the battle were now stacked up along Ptolemy's route. The people told him what Jonathan had done, hoping that he would hold him responsible. But Ptolemy said nothing. Jonathan, with all of the proper ceremony, went to Joppa to meet him. They exchanged greetings and spent the night there. Jonathan accompanied him as far as, again, I don't pronounce this stuff right, some river, before returning to Jerusalem. And I know it's all important. In this way, King Ptolemy, in his plot against Alexander, took control of the towns along the coast as far north as Seleucia by the sea. From there, King Ptolemy sent this message to King Demetrius. Let's make a treaty. My daughter is now Alexander's wife, but I will take her back and give her to you and let you rule over your father's kingdom. I regret that I ever gave her to Alexander because he has tried to kill me. Ptolemy made this accusation against Alexander because he wanted to take over his kingdom. So it's not the truth. So he took his daughter away from Alexander and gave her to Demetrius. He broke off all relations with Alexander, and they became open enemies. Then Ptolemy entered Antioch and assumed the crown of Syria. So he wore both the crown of Egypt and the crown of Syria. Right now as I'm reading this, I feel like I need to write it down, who's who, how they are related, because it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, give me a map. King Alexander was in Sicilia. at the time because the people of the region were in a state of rebellion. But when he heard what Ptolemy had done, he moved to attack him. Ptolemy met him with a large force and won a decisive victory. While Ptolemy reached the peak of his power, Alexander fled to Arabia to find protection. But an Arab named Zabadil cut off his head, and sent it to Ptolemy. These people are vicious. 2 days later, Ptolemy himself died, and the troops he had left in the fortress were then killed by the local citizens. So in the year 167, Demetrius II became king. So it's like one-liners, your head's off, you're dead, next. That's the way I read this. Jonathan wins the favor of Demetrius II. So, about the time Jonathan gathered the men of Judea to attack the fort in Jerusalem, about that time, Jonathan gathered the men of Judea to attack the fort in Jerusalem. They built many siege platforms to use in the attack. That must be some big deal with building siege platforms, like so that they're not on the ground, they're a little bit higher. So I guess they can see, further down the field or whatever. But some treacherous Jews who hated their own nation. Oh, that's painful. That's painful. As we, as so-called African Americans, so-called blacks, how we hate each other. And we've been taught to hate each other. That's what makes me think about. Went to King Demetrius II and told him that Jonathan was laying siege to the fort of Jerusalem. So they're snitches. When Demetrius heard this, he was furious and immediately moved his headquarters to Ptolemais. He wrote to Jonathan and ordered him to lift the siege and to meet him for a conference in Ptolemais without a moment's delay. When Jonathan got the message, he gave orders for the siege to continue, like, I ain't stopping, and then chose some Jewish leaders and some priests to go with him. At the risk of his life, he went to the king in Ptolemais, taking his robes, silver and gold, and many other gifts. He made a good impression on the king. Although some lawless traitors of his own nation had made accusations against Jonathan, the king still treated him just as his predecessors had done. He honored him in the presence of all of his advisers and confirmed him as high priest, restoring all the former honors and appointing him to the highest rank among the friends of the king. Jonathan asked the king to release the territory of Judea and the 3 regions of Samaria from the payment of taxes, promising that if Demetrius would do that, he would pay him a lump sum of 22,000 pounds of silver. The king agreed and wrote a letter to Jonathan to confirm all of this. King Demetrius to King Jonathan, and to the Jewish nation, greetings. For your information, what does that say? Hold on a second. This is 30. This is 11:30. Jewish here. 11:30. Yeah, it doesn't. It says Jews. King Demetrius unto his brother Jonathan, unto the nation of the Jews. So this nation of the Jews, you see this. So that's interesting. So we're gonna say Jews. Jew to the Jew nation, greetings. For your information, I am sending a copy of the letter I have written to the Honorable Lasthenes about you. King Demetrius to the Honorable Lasthenes, greetings. I have decided to grant the Jew nation certain benefits because they are loyal allies and keep their treaty obligations. I confirm their rights to the land of Judea and the 3 regions of Ephraim, Lydia, and Armathia, which are hereby annexed to Judea from Samaria, with all the lands belonging to them. This will be of benefit to everyone who goes to Jerusalem to offer sacrifice, since payments of the annual tax on produce and fruit from these lands will no longer be made to the king, but to the temple, and I grant them relief from the payment of revenues now due me from tithes, tolls, salt taxes, and special taxes. I still think this tax, there's something to the tax thing as a form of reparations. None of the provisions mentioned in this letter shall ever be canceled in the future. Wow. You are required to see that a complete copy of this decree is made and given to Jonathan to be posted in a prominent place on the temple hill. Jonathan helped Demetrius II. When King Demetrius saw that the land was peaceful under his rule and there was no further resistance, he disbanded the whole army and sent everyone home, except the soldiers he had hired from the Greek islands. This made all the soldiers who had served under his predecessors hate him because they had lost their source of income. Okay. One of Alexander's former supporters, Trypo, saw that all soldiers were complaining about Demetrius, so he went to Almaku, the Arab, who was responsible for bringing up Alexander's young son Antiochus. Trypo stayed there for a long time and kept urging Almaku to hand the boy over to him so that he could make him king in place of his father. He also told Almaku about the decrees of Demetrius and how the soldiers hated him. Jonathan sent a message to King Demetrius, asking him to remove his troops from the fort in Jerusalem and from the fortress in Judea, since they kept harassing the Jews. Demetrius replied, I will do what you request. I will do what you request. And when the opportunity presents itself, I will bestow upon you and your nation the highest honors. But now you can help me by sending soldiers to fight for me, because all of my troops have revolted. Okay, he needs troops now. So Jonathan sent 3,000 trained soldiers to Antioch. The king was delighted when they arrived, because a mob of 120,000 had gathered in the city, determined to kill him. But he escaped to the palace, while the mob took control of the streets and began to riot. Then the king called on the Jew soldiers for help, and they all rushed to his aid. They went through the whole city and killed at least 100,000 people. So 3,000 soldiers killed 100,000 people. They saved the king's life, but they plundered and burned the city. When the people saw that the Jews had complete control of the city, they lost courage and appealed to the king, requesting him to arrange a truce and stop the Jew attack. The rebels threw down their arms and surrendered. The king and everyone in his kingdom now had great respect for the Jews, who returned to Jerusalem with a great deal of loot. Demetrius had firmly established as king, and the country was at peace under his rule. But he broke all of his promises and turned against Jonathan. He did not reward him for his loyal service, but instead continued to harass him. It's just like a repeat over and over again, same thing. Jonathan supports Antiochus VI. Sometime later, Trypo returned with the young boy Antiochus and crowned him king. All the soldiers that Demetrius had dismissed then came to the support of the young king. They defeated Demetrius and he fled. Trypo captured the elephants and took control of Antioch. The young king Antiochus wrote to Jonathan and confirmed him as high priest and as ruler over the 4 regions and gave him the title friend of the king. He sent him a set of gold tableware and authorized him to drink from gold cups, to wear a royal robe, and to wear the gold shoulder buckle awarded to relatives of the king. He then appointed Jonathan's brother Simon as governor of the territory from the Phoenician coast to the Egyptian border. Jonathan then marched with his army through the town of Greater Syria, and all the Syrian forces joined him as allies. He went to Ashkelon, where the people welcomed him with great honors. Then he went to Gaza, but the people there barred their gates against him. I wonder if it's the same Gaza as today. So he laid siege to the city and burned and looted the surrounding area. The people of Gaza then asked for peace, and Jonathan arranged a truce. He took the sons of the leaders and sent them to Jerusalem as hostages. After that, he marched on as far as Damascus. Jonathan learned that the officers of Demetrius had come to Kadesh in Galilee with a large army, intending to keep him from carrying out his plan. So he left his brother Simon in Judea and set out to meet them in battle. Then Simon laid siege to Bethzar and fought against it for a long time. The people asked for peace terms, and Simon agreed. And they took over the town, drove the people out, and stationed a detachment of troops there. Jonathan and his army set up camp by Lake Galilee. Early the next morning, he marched his troops to the plain of Hazor, where the main force of the foreign army was advancing to meet him. Unknown to Jonathan, they had left a detachment of troops in ambush in the mountains. And when the men in ambush came out and attacked, Jonathan's entire army turned and ran. Wow. No one was left except two officers, Matthias' son and Absalom, and Judah's son of Calphi. Jonathan was humiliated, so he tore his clothes, threw dust on his head, and prayed. And he turned back to the battle, crushed the enemy, and put them to flight. When his own fleeting soldiers saw this, they turned back and joined him in pursuit. They chased the enemy all the way back to the camp of Kadesh, and then took over the camp. At least 3,000 enemy soldiers were killed that day. Jonathan then returned to Jerusalem. So it's like it's like a repeat of war, new kings. They like Jonathan or one of the Maccabees. Then they renege on the deal. New king, fight again. The Jews win the war. If they don't win, they haven't prayed to the Most High. When they pray to the Most High, then they win. They take the loot, burn the city, kill the people. It's like repeat, repeat, repeat. But the repeat is always where the Jewish nation is winning. That may be part of the reason I keep going back to why did they take this book out of the King James version of the Bible. So that was First Maccabees, chapter 11. We'll end it there. Until next time.